Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this little blue cutie is the new Hyundai Inster. Now, over the last, say, 5 or 6 years, every time we've seen a manufacturer unveil a new electric car, we tend to get the same reaction in the comments section. Ugh, another SUV, another electric vehicle that starts at £30,000 or upwards, and they're just refrigerators on wheels, there's no character or soul to them, so I'll stick with my petrol or diesel engine. And for the most part, yeah, the consumers have been right. They've been financially unobtainable for a lot of people, or just too big for their lifestyle. Which is weird, because if we look before the kind of EV boom, what cars did we have on offer to buy? Well, we had small family hatchbacks. We had the Renault Zoe, the Nissan Leaf, two incredibly popular electric vehicles, and they were normal sized. And over the last, say, 2 years, we have seen manufacturers looking to kind of bring EVs into that segment, but not only that, to try and make them affordable to most buyers. Now, we have seen it with the likes of the tiny Dacia Spring. Recently, I went on the launch of the new BYD Dolphin Surf, another kind of small electric hatchback, and now we've got this from Hyundai, the Inster. Now, you're probably wondering, why is it called the Inster and not, say, the IONIQ 1? Because that's how Hyundai have been naming their EVs. Well, just like the Kona electric, there's also a petrol version of the Inster, which is sold in Korea, but it's not called the Inster, it's actually called the Casper. So for the electric version, which is a little bit bigger, they have changed its name, and they have given it a pretty affordable price when compared to its rivals. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but even for a little electric vehicle, this is going up against some heavy hitters from the likes of BYD and Dacia, but also the new Renault 5, which has won a ton of awards. So, I've had this new Hyundai Inster for a week, and I'm going to answer a couple of big questions. Number one, what's it like? And number two, is this just a refrigerator on wheels, or does this cutesy little electric car finally have some character? Well, stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the Inster's styling, I think Hyundai have done an amazing job again with this little car. I mean, it looks so cute and quirky from the front, and it is really distinctive and easily recognizable as a Hyundai because of the oversized pixels to signify it is an electric model from the Korean brand. Now, when you look at the Inster from profile view, it does look shockingly similar to the Suzuki Ignis, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because that too is a small, cute and quirky little hatchback, albeit the Inster is a bit bigger. But I love the face up front, but it is a little bit deceiving, because you're probably thinking that these oversized pixels are your daytime running lights, but you'd be mistaken. They're actually your indicators. The surrounds to the headlight cluster are actually your DRLs, and you've actually got LEDs as well. Not only that, but when you go to the back of the car, you're probably expecting a kind of mirror image of the front. But no, it's actually a bit more traditional back there, where the massive pixel cluster is actually your rear tail lights and also your brake lights. And I love the fact that on the higher brake light you have got pixels there as well, again signifying it is an electric vehicle from Hyundai. And then what we have got, which is a bit surprising again, is that the charging flap is here at the front, just offset from this little sensor cluster here. I love the fact as well you can see pixels just underneath this perspex. And also the Hyundai badge at the front and rear is actually not a real badge. It's again just a little cutout here in this kind of black plastic trim. So that is also very unique. And then we've also got on this particular car, because it is the O2 trim level, 17-inch alloy wheels, and they are really distinctive, very easy to clean as well, because they've got that kind of blade cover technology there to make it a bit more aerodynamic and streamlined. But the one thing that really does stand out on the Inster, it's the colour. This is called Dusk Blue, and it is a matte paint option. There are other choices available when it comes to matte paints, and it really is a highlight to the car. So many people, when they've seen it up close, have just been gobsmacked that a little dinky car like this would have such a unique paint job. So again, hats off to Hyundai and a big bravo, because I actually think you've created something that looks really distinctive. It looks fun and quirky, and look up front, it has got a face. It has got character to it. But you let me know what you think of the Insta's design in the comments section below. Do you like it, or are there better looking cars in the segment? And on that note, I think it's time that we leave the cute exterior of the Insta and we see what it's like with the interior. Sat in the front of the Insta, you are greeted with a really cleverly designed interior that also has that old school city car feel to it, but it is jam-packed full of tech. This really is a nice, comfortable place to be. Now, when it comes to getting in and out of the Insta, it is really easy because the doors open nice and wide. You do have a slightly raised seated position compared to a traditional hatchback, but not only that, the Insta is actually quite tall, so there's quite a large aperture for you to get in and out of the car. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, I do recommend having a look at the Insta, but I'll just mention that you don't have a grab handle for the driver, but you do for the front passenger. And then once you're sat in the driver's seat, you find that the seats are surprisingly comfortable. They are manual adjustment only, but you don't have any adjustable lumbar support. But that's actually not something I've been worried about this week, because the seats have actually got a good amount of lower back support, so that's been a real positive. And then with the steering, I have got both rake and reach adjustment, so getting the perfect driving position is easy. But one thing I will mention straight away, it's the B pillar. It is really close to me and I am rubbing shoulders with it. So it definitely gives that city car feel. Although granted, the way it's designed, if you were in something a bit old school like a Volkswagen Up or a Skoda Citigo, you probably wouldn't be rubbing your shoulder against it. But it is a bit of a unique design, and it does take a couple of days to get used to when you are living with the Insta. And then when it comes to interior quality, again, we have got that old school feel. We have got plenty of hard, scratchy plastics around the cabin. However, we have got this kind of what I think is probably recycled material here on the center console, here on the armrest as well, and on the door cards, which is really nice to lean up against when you're driving. And one thing I was a little bit worried about when I was sat here is that I was going to be a little bit kind of squished in and my legs forced to be a little bit closer together. Yeah, for myself, that would definitely not do me well on a long journey. But because we've got this open area here for the center console, I can kind of spread my legs out a little bit and get really comfortable. So that is a bonus. So yeah, when you get yourself into the Insta up front, it is a really unique in terms of the design for the interior, but it also feels quite modern with the technology you got on here, and the seats are also surprisingly comfortable. Cubby spaces in the Insta are actually pretty good. However, there are a couple of little weak areas, but there are also a couple of unique features as well. So firstly, the door pockets, they do very much remind me of the IONIQ 6, being quite narrow up next to the door with that kind of transparent plastic. So you can't get any bottles of drink in there at all, unless you've got one of those kind of weird, funky, kind of cuboidy type bottles that we're seeing nowadays and seems to be bombarding my Instagram adverts. That would probably fit in there, but a normal bottle that's round, no, you are going to struggle. And then here on the center console, what we have got lower down is we have got a little open tray area. It's not rubber lined or anything, so loose items will rattle around a bit, but it is very useful. Just up above that, we have got another tray area, but this is for your wireless charging pad, and it is rubber lined to keep your phone in place. And what I do love is that there is a little light bar on the side to indicate that the phone is charging. So that is really handy. And then just above this kind of center console cluster, we have got a little tray area behind, and also it stretches to just above the glove box there, and that is really handy because when you are using your phone for Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it is tethered only, so you need a place to put your phone. And I do use this little tray area on the side, which is very handy, but again, it's not lined with any fabric or rubber, but it doesn't seem to make too much noise. It seems to be the perfect size for my phone to kind of sit and rest there. I will mention we have got a USB-C, USB-A and a 12-volt socket just up above there, which is very handy. Now back here on the seat, and actually integrated into the driver's seat, are two cup holders. Now they are of a decent size and depth. They're not rubber lined, it is hard scratchy plastic, but it will keep a lot of your drinks in place. Now if you're worried about something being underneath this second cup holder, don't worry. You can move the armrest back to make it easy to access the drinks there. However, if you've got it back there, you're probably having a little bit of a panic because the drinks will be exposed. So you can just put that forward. There's kind of a little bit of a cover there, and also to rest your arm on. And then we have got the glove box, which is of an okay size and shape. Yes, the book pack does take up a bit of space, but it is actually pretty decent. It's not lined with any fabric or rubber, but that's not really surprising, but it is decent enough. And then we have got a couple of unique features. One of them here, which is actually like a little hook to put your shopping on. Probably great and very handy when you've just picked up a curry. But not only that, on the actual passenger door, there is also another hook where you can hang a bag off, and it's not going to roll around in the footwell. So that is actually really unique. So yeah, when it comes to the cubby spaces here in the Inster, they have been really cleverly designed and very, very quirky indeed. Now, even though the Inster is a full electric vehicle, we still have a very old school interior in here with plenty of physical buttons, and that will definitely please a lot of potential customers, especially if you don't want a big giant touchscreen in the center of your cockpit like you would find on a BYD Dolphin Surf. So when it comes to physical controls here in the Inster, we have got your hazard light switch set between a couple of air vents. We have then got just a little bit below a row of shortcut buttons with a couple of rotary knobs for the volume and tuning, and there's also one button there that you can assign and customize as another shortcut button. As I mentioned earlier, we have got your USB-A, USB-C and 12-volt socket just offset there to the center console. Then just below there, we have got your single zone climate control controls, and it is really easy to use when on the move in the way that it's been laid out. And I don't know why, but I get reminders of the old or original Toyota Aygo with the fact that we got one button here for adjusting the fan strength and another one on the other side for the temperature. But that is just really nicely laid out. Then just below there, we have got a couple of buttons for the heated front seats. You get them as standard on the O2 trim. And then just off to the side of there, we have got 3 buttons for your auto hold to access the reversing camera and also the front and rear parking sensors. Also, this particular car does come with the tech pack, so we do get vehicle to load. So right at the bottom, we've actually got a 3-pin socket there. So that is actually very handy, and that reminds me of the old Honda E, which is now discontinued. But that was also another fun and quirky little electric vehicle. It's just a shame it was a bit expensive and, well, didn't go very far on a charge. Now onto the steering wheel, where on the left-hand side, we have got your radar-guided cruise controls, and yes, you heard me correct there. All cars come with radar guided cruise control. We have then got a little rocker switch there and a button to go through the driver data display menu. Another button just lower down for your drive mode select, so that is actually very handy. On the right hand side, we have got your voice, media and communication controls, again with another customizable button that you can assign via the infotainment screen, so that's a nice little shortcut there. We have got your flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel to adjust the regen braking, and this is a real highlight to the Inster. Something I will mention straight away as well is that all Insters come with a heat pump as standard. Can't say that about a lot of premium brands, but on the Inster, yeah, you do get it. You have then got your physical stalks there on the steering column, and they do feel really nice and tactile. And we have got a big stalk here sticking out here for the gear select, something we saw on a couple of the older EVs from Hyundai. So it has got the old school kind of round look to it. And then on the right hand side, which I have to kind of lean over to see, we have got buttons for the heated steering wheel, the traction control on and off switch, and also the electric handbrake. And then we've got your buttons on the right hand side to adjust the windows and the mirrors. So yeah, when it comes to kind of physical buttons here in the Inster's cabin, it's really old school, really nicely laid out and very easy to use when on the move. And then finally, we've got the infotainment system and the digital dashboard display, both of which are 10.25 inches, and they are standard on all trim levels. And as you can see, we have got this old school design, not like we're seeing with modern day Hyundai Group vehicles, where the infotainment system is set high up on the dash and the digital driver display a little bit lower down, kind of like what we saw on the pre-facelifted Tucson. Also with the infotainment screen, I would usually complain that it's not turned towards the driver, but because this is a city car, you don't have to lean forward too much in order to access the screen and the menus. Now, going on with the infotainment system, as I mentioned, we have got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They are tethered only, so I would like to see wireless available on perhaps a facelift of the Insta or via an update to the system. And in regards to the operating system itself, it is of the previous generation, but it still works really well. The menu icons are nice and big. It is pretty responsive, but yes, when you kind of go into the sub menus, they do get a little bit small. So there's definitely an element of setup before you set off. And another area where it kind of shows that it's a little bit dated against newer rivals or against newer Hyundai Group cars is when you put the reversing camera on, it's not the clearest of images. There is a little bit of graininess there, and when you are using it at night, there is a lot of noise on the display there. So that's just something to be aware of, but for the most part, it'll do everything you want it to. And then we'll move on to the digital driver's display. So as I mentioned again, it is 10.25 inches, and just like the infotainment system, it is of the previous generation display. But what you have got is, like, at standard is kind of 2 analog dials. They will change with an animation if you go through the various drive modes, and using the little button and the little wheel on the left hand side of the steering wheel, you can go through the various driver menus, and it is actually really easy to use. The only thing that's kind of bugged me a little bit is that I can't get like a big speedometer on one of the analog displays. You can have it in the center going through the menu, but I'd like to see my kind of driver data information on display and have the speedometer kind of off to the side. So what I have done is I have gone to this very unique display, which I have seen on some old school Hyundais from a few years ago. We get these like unique cubes that kind of pop up, as I kind of think there's actually, maybe they're linked to the pixels on the exterior of the car. I don't know, you'll have to let me know. But I have been using that for having my speedometer, driver data information, and then I've got things like my range and efficiency on the right-hand side. But it does everything you want it to. It's nice, crisp and clear to read whilst you're driving. And really, I've had no issues with it whatsoever. And when it comes to the infotainment system, I've spent most of my time using CarPlay, and that's been really easy to use as well. So yeah, being sat here in the front of the Insta, it feels very old school, but jam-packed full of tech. I do love the quirky design, and it is also surprisingly comfortable back here. Like I said, even though I haven't got any like adjustable lumbar support, but the only thing I say is don't write off the Insta when you get in and you notice that that B pillar is right there. That's the only thing that kind of definitely stands out when you're sat here. But have a little drive in it, take a little bit of time, because it only took a couple of days for me to get used to it. So again, definitely pop to your dealership, try and see if you can get an extended test drive of the Insta, because yeah, that might put you off at first, but I got used to it very quickly. Also, something I really love in the Insta, and it's not really got any purpose other than an aesthetic, but look at these giant screws here on the door card. I mean, they're just oversized and daft, but again, it's just showing that Hyundai are trying to kind of put character into the Insta. I mean, that's got no purpose whatsoever, but absolutely love it. And on that note, I think it's time that we leave the front of the Insta and we see what it's like for rear passengers. Sat in the back of the Insta, it is surprisingly spacious and comfortable back here, and one of the reasons that Hyundai made the smart decision to make the Insta a 4-seater rather than a 5-seater. Because I do think if you had even 3 kids sat in the back of the Insta, they would be very cramped and quite uncomfortable, even though there's a completely flat floor in here. So thank you again, Hyundai, for making the decision to have 2 people sat in the rear. Now, when it comes to getting in and out of the back of the Insta, again, like the front, it's really easy because the doors open nice and wide, and you have got a couple of grab handles to assist getting in and out. And then when it comes to space, that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got a really good amount of knee room. I can get my feet underneath the driver's seat, and also headroom is really good as well. So you could get 2 6-footers sat in the back of the Insta and they would be comfortable back here. That is a real highlight to the car. What's not quite a highlight though is the cubby spaces, or should I say cubby space, because we have got some door pockets back here, but just like the front, they're very slim and narrow, so you wouldn't even be able to get a small bottle of drink in there. We've got no aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats, nor do we have a center armrest, because of course this is a two-seater in the back. So when it does come to other cubby spaces, as you can clearly see here on the passenger side, or should I say on the back of the passenger seat, we have got a little tray area with a little cup holder in there as well, so that will be very handy for young kids back here. But what I love is that all you have to really do is give a bit of a turn and a twist, and they pop out like so. So that's actually very cool and very handy. And then just to fit them with a couple of magnets, et voila, nice and simple. And then when it comes to features, apart from the tray area here, they are actually pretty good. We have actually got a USB-C charging input. It is hidden away behind the armrest there. We have got the two seats here. They can slide forward and back, which is very handy. And look how far they go forward. I mean, that is massively impressive if you need to increase the boot capacity. But not only that, you can actually recline them, and you can recline them very far as well. I mean, that is surprisingly comfortable. Almost feels like I'm sat in a Santa Fe. Hard to believe I'm saying that about a small little electric city car. But yeah, that is actually really cool. And then finally, we have got the windows, which are of a lovely shape and size. They are tinted on this 2 spec, and surprisingly as well, they do open all the way down. So that is a real highlight there. So yeah, when it comes to the kind of space and comfort back in the Inster, yeah, it's a real positive. It's just a shame that we haven't got many cubby spaces, but I think the space and the comfort back here definitely makes up for it. And on that note, I think it's time we pop outside and see what the boot is like. Opening the boot of the Inster presents you with 280 litres, which is a little bit more than what we used to get from conventional city cars such as the Volkswagen Up and even the new Toyota Aygo Cross Hybrid. But I will say, if you do slide the rear seats forward, you can get up to 351 litres of space, and that's where it definitely competes with cars in the segment above it. Now, when you get the boot open, you are presented with a nice wide square load area. However, when you look at the boot capacity, it doesn't look anywhere near those 280 litres, and that's because we've got a variable boot floor and the rest of the boot space is underneath. And second, we have got this very unique parcel shelf, which does create kind of like a saloon car aperture if you are loading and unloading any items. And what's disappointing is that you can't put this parcel shelf underneath the boot floor if you are going to load any large bulky items into your Inster. Now, when it comes to features, we don't have any tethering hooks or a 12-volt socket. As I've mentioned, we've got the variable boot floor. Underneath the other boot floor, underneath that, is your tyre puncture repair kit. We have got room underneath for your charging cables. We don't have a frunk on the Inster because of that kind of very small area, so that's kind of jam-packed with the electric motor and all your gubbins. But we have got your 2 charging cables here, and we've got a couple of boxes. Now, one of them is empty because it's for the little tray that's on the back of the front passenger seat, but we've also got a second box here. And what I love with this box is that we've got these. Now, you remember I mentioned the little panels on the driver's door and front passenger door, which had the big over-the-top screws on them? Yeah, you can actually switch them out, which I think is very quirky. Now, granted, I probably will stick with what's on there at the moment, but it's great to see that, you know, you can kind of customize your Inster and get some of these nice little accessories. Now, with the parcel shelf, I will mention there are 2 bits of fabric here, which aren't really kind of shelves. I wouldn't put anything on them because they have got little clips onto the back of their headrests here. So if you do slide the seats forward, they will detach like so. And then what we can do is the big feature for the Inster. So putting the seats down, which I can do from back here. Oh, see, there's a lot of recline there. Now, they don't go completely flat because I've got to go to the side to finish that job off. And now I have a completely flat load area. Not only that, I can lower down the front passenger seat. So if I got any very long items, I can slide them in, and that way I'm not having to kind of get a bigger car in order to help me out. That is an absolutely brilliant feature. But wait, there's more. I can do the same with the driver's seat, and I can turn the Inster into a little camper van. And because of one of the big things that goes on in Korea now called Chibak, which basically means car camping, you can live in your Inster. And not only that, as I mentioned earlier, I've got a 12-volt socket for vehicle to load, so I can power small appliances and actually live in the car. That is something I think is really unique with the Inster. And probably in Korea, you could buy an air mattress that would fit that area of the Inster and be bespoke to the car. So that is actually really cool and very unique, as I just said. So yeah, when it comes to the overall boot capacity, yes, it's not as big as some of its rivals, but it does extend to 351 litres. When you get the rear seats down, they go completely flat. It's unfortunate you can't put the partial shelf underneath the boot floor, but someone has said to me that they would have the rear seats down and slid forward, and you have got these plastic panels to cover the gap from the seats to the boot, so no small items will fall down there, and they'd have their dogs be in the back of the car because it's completely flat. So there, yeah, when it comes to the boot capacity and the features of the Inster, there are so many of them, and it more than makes up for the lack of tethering hooks and a 12-volt socket. So yeah, that is actually really quirky. And you know what? I think it's time we get the seats up, boot down, and we take the Inster on the road. So once you start driving the Inster, first impressions are really positive. Firstly, it is surprisingly comfortable, but it's also a very nippy and fun car to drive. You can tell very quickly that this will be perfect for town and urban environments. Now, because this isn't really a traditional hatchback, you do sit a little bit higher up than you would do. When it comes to visibility, I will say it's pretty good, but there are a couple of weak areas. Now, firstly, because I've got that slightly raised seated position, I actually have a really lovely view of the road ahead. And because of that kind of stumpy front end, I can just about judge where the front of the car is. Now, I will say that the entry-level Inster does come with rear parking sensors as standard, but if you go up to the mid-spec 2, which is what I've got here, you do get front and rear parking sensors as standard, along with a reversing camera. So that is actually really handy, and if you go for the top of the range cross, you get a 360 cameras, so that will definitely help if you have any issues with parking. But with this being a small little boxy car, it is actually really easy. The A-pillars are a bit thick and chunky, but I've not found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a nice shape and size, but I don't have blind spot monitoring. You do get that on the top of the range cross trim level. And then when I look over my shoulder, I do find that there is a bit of a thick C-pillar there, but I will be honest, it's not really caused me any issues whilst I've had the Inster. And then rear visibility is actually really good in the fact that you've got a large rear screen there to look out of, but it is obstructed by the two rear headrests. So that's just something to be aware of. But definitely look at the 2 spec if you want kind of a good amount of help when it comes to parking, because you get the front and rear sensors plus the reversing camera. So yeah, once you start driving the Inster, first impressions are very positive. That is surprisingly comfortable as well. Now, when it comes to trim levels in the Inster range, there are 3 to choose from, and they are named a little bit differently from other Hyundai cars. So we have got the entry level 1, we got the mid-spec 2, which is what I've got here, and then there is the top of the range Cross. Now, in terms of standard equipment, I do recommend going for the 2, because this seems to be the sweet spot. You get everything that you would want and need as standard. As I mentioned, you get front and rear parking sensors, a reversing camera. You still get the 2 10.25 inch screens. You also get them on the entry level 1. You got single zone climate control. I've got radar guided cruise control. With the 2, I do get heated front seats and a heated steering wheel, and it is leather wrapped as well. And yeah, in terms of kind of that standard kit, I've got everything I'd want and need. If you do want to go up to the Cross, it tends to be more kind of little kind of perks to the car. You know, you get things like a sunroof, you get the 360 cameras, just kind of little extras there for you. But I'd recommend just sticking with the 2. This does seem to be the sweet spot, and I've not found myself wanting for anything. Even the lack of blind spot hasn't really impacted me that much. But granted, I haven't done any big motorway drives in the Inster because I've been really kind of sticking to keeping it near home, because this is the type of car the Inster is. It's not meant to be a long-range cruiser. It's meant to be a small family hatchback / city car. And I think Hyundai have done a really good job with the packaging, as well as the kind of kit levels as well. So yeah, I would recommend going for the 2 in terms of spec. However, I will mention this: if you want the smallest battery, and I'll talk about that in a second, you will need to go for the 1, because the 2 and the Cross don't get the smallest battery, they get the largest battery. So that's the thing just to be aware of there. So when it comes to powering the Inster, there are 2 battery sizes available to you. There is the standard range and the long range. Now, as I just mentioned, the standard range is only available on the entry level 1 trim, but surprisingly, the larger battery, the long range, is available on all 3 trim levels. And that is quite surprising, because usually manufacturers kind of reserve the larger battery and higher performance for kind of the higher up trim levels as kind of a reward for spending a little bit extra. So it's great to see that you got those 2 battery choices for the entry level. Now, when it comes to things like range, with the standard range battery, it is a claimed 203 miles, that's WLTP, and with the long range that is increased to 229 miles for the 1 trim, and it does drop by 6 miles to 223 for the 2 and the Cross trim levels, and that's mainly down to the fact that the alloys go from 15s on the 1 to 17s on the 2 and Cross, because yes, that will affect your range. But the big surprise is that when I did charge up my Inster up to 100% the other day, it actually gave me a claimed 231 miles. That's 8 miles more than what Hyundai put down on paper, so I was really impressed by that. Now granted, yes, once I started driving and I covered about 2 miles, it did drop by about 4 miles of range, but then it kind of settled down. But I will put everything on screen now for you so you can compare the kind of power and performance of those batteries. But essentially, if you are to go for the standard battery, you get 95 brake horsepower and 147 Newton meters of torque, and a 0 to 62 time of 11.7 seconds. So yes, it's not the quickest car out there, but then again, this isn't the kind of car where performance is key. This is a little city runaround. If you go for the larger 49 kilowatt hour battery, you do then get an increase of power up to 113 brake horsepower. Torque remains the same at 147 Newton meters, but your 0 to 62 time does drop to 10.6 seconds. Now you're probably thinking, that's still not very impressive, but this is a city car. This is also an electric car, so 0 to 62 is not really the number you're going to be looking at. Kind of that 0 to 30 performance is where it stands out, and because this is a little EV, you put your foot down, you get that instant response with power and torque, and you get that instant acceleration. So when you put the Inster into sport mode, off the line, you can shock a few people, because, well, they're probably thinking you've got, I don't know, 50 brake horsepower. They're not expecting the kind of performance that you're going to get from that kind of 0 to 30. But the one thing I've been really loving in the Inster whilst I've had it this week is I'm starting to see, when they talk about city range, because of the type of car it is, I haven't been doing long drives. I've been driving it the way it's basically been intended to. So I've been driving to work and back, driving around town, doing little trips. And I am finding that the range is increasing. The efficiency is absolutely bloody brilliant. I'm getting now 4.9 miles per kilowatt hour. That's since I kind of recharged the car up to 100%. So that was a couple of days ago. But right now, I'm actually getting 5.2 miles per kilowatt hour. That is massively impressive when it comes to efficiency. And I haven't been driving like Miss Daisy or had this car in eco mode. It has been driven in normal mode, standard mode, if you will. So I've not really been trying to drive and get the best efficiency. I've been driving it like normal on the speed limit and just letting the car do its thing. And it really is a little kind of, I was going to say frugal, but a very efficient little EV. Not only that, the range has already increased of what I've covered, if that makes sense, because of that kind of city driving and city driving lifestyle. So I've got 162 miles of range left in the car, but since charging I've done, as near as makes no difference, 80 miles. So I'm already 10 miles up from when I charged it, and that's just down to the efficiency of the car, allowing the regen braking and everything to kind of do its thing. And we'll talk about the regen braking in a second. But I'm just finding now that kind of, when they talk about kind of the city range and that in cars being a lot higher than the kind of WLTP range, in a car like this, you're really going to see it, and you'll see it very quickly. Not only that, but on the display, depending on which one you have, I've got the little squarey cube things up, as I mentioned earlier. It gives me a max range and a minimum range. So basically, if I was to hoon it around like an idiot, I'd have 101 miles left, basically, of range, not 162. But if I kind of still kind of eke it out and drive efficiently, I should say, it does go up to 184. And if it did that, well, it basically means I'll have 260 miles I would have done in range. That's really impressive. That's an extra 40 miles over that 223. So yeah, when it comes to the power and performance of the Inster, it's not going to light your hair on fire or your beard on fire if you've got no hair on your head, but that's not the type of car it is. This is a little, pardon what I say here because it's basically naming another car, this is a little urban cruiser. This is a little city car. It just happens to be electric, and the efficiency, yeah, it just shows itself so quickly. It really is that impressive. Now, I just want to quickly mention that you have got 4 drive modes to choose from. You've got your 3 usual ones. You've got Eco, Normal and Sport. And then there is one for snow as well. And basically what they do is they just adjust the responsiveness of the accelerator pedal. And I will be honest, with this type of car, with the power there, I don't really recommend putting it into Eco mode. Stick with Normal, or put it into Sport, of course, if you want that little bit of extra nippiness to overtake, because it is really instant and responsive. But don't bother putting it in Eco, because we'll talk about the regen braking in a second, which is a real highlight to the car. Now, when it comes to charging and brake regeneration in the Inster, it is actually really impressive. So firstly, we'll start with charging, which if you're using an AC charger is a maximum of 10.5 kilowatts. So if you use an 11 kilowatt charger, you can go from 10 to 100% with the standard range battery at around 4 hours, and that increases to around 4.5 hours for the long range battery, just because of that larger size there. And then when it comes to DC charging, it is at a maximum of 85 kilowatts. Now that doesn't sound very impressive, but don't forget what type of car the Inster is. It's a little urban cruiser, a little urban EV runaround. So it's not really meant to do lots of rapid charging and long miles. So with those 85 kilowatts, if you want to charge from 10 to 80% on a 50 kilowatt charger, it will take around 58 minutes, and that's on both size batteries. And if you do go to a rapid charger, say a 350 charger, that same 10 to 80% takes just 30 minutes, which is kind of the norm for most EVs. So you really won't be kind of sitting there too long if you need to go for a wee and a cup of tea. But the highlight of the Inster is the brake regeneration. Now, we know with Hyundai Group cars, they have got their flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel. You can go from 0, where the car will just coast, all the way up to iPedal and also an auto mode. But with the iPedal, it is proper one pedal driving. You will hardly use the brake pedal. It really is that strong. The last time I came across brake regeneration this strong was in another Hyundai Group product. I haven't actually reviewed it, I've only driven one on a test drive, but it was the Kia Niro EV, and I absolutely loved the brake regeneration in that car. It was really impressive, and to have it now and experience that strength in the Inster has been a real highlight. I have hardly had to have to use the brake when I'm driving along, and it's perfect around town. Not only that, it will take you to a complete stop. That's another highlight as well. There is no slow crawl when you're kind of slowing down. So yeah, when it comes to the charging and the brake regeneration, it suits the Inster really well. And another highlight as well with the brake regen. Now, this is a bit of a weird one, but whenever I've driven another Hyundai Group car, an EV, where I've put it into iPedal for the brake regeneration, I kind of get this feeling that the car is kind of, you know, trying to slow me down. It's trying to put that brake regen on even when I'm accelerating. But in the Inster, I don't feel it. And it's only when I take my foot off the pedal, there's a tiny little pause or gap, and then the brake regen kicks in. But it's so minute. So what it means is that when you do kind of put your foot down, you feel that acceleration. You don't feel like you can feel the brakes trying to grab and like hold you back. And then when you take your foot off, you get that full whack of the brake regeneration, and it is really impressive. And it is something that definitely helps with the efficiency of the car, particularly around town and residential areas. That's where it comes into its own. And another reason as well where I say don't really put the car into eco mode. Keep it in normal, perhaps even keep it in sport, and just adjust the brake regeneration. And then that way you got the best of both worlds. You're not feeling that the power's being held back because you got it in eco mode, and also you don't feel like you're being held back when you're accelerating because the iPedal is trying to do its thing. So yes, when it comes to the charging and the brake regeneration, I know I've spoken quite a lot about it. It is a real highlight in the Inster, and like I said, I'm now looking around 240 miles I think I'm going to get out of this with the way I'm going. And I'm not actually driving in the most efficient way since I've been filming. I've been driving on a lot of A roads at 60 miles an hour. So anyway, yes, brake regeneration, charging, a real highlight on the Inster. So what about the Inster's ride and refinement? Well, I'm just driving into the village where I do my little kind of ride test and evaluation. And like I said earlier, I've got the number 2 spec, so I've got the larger 17-inch alloy wheels. And I will say this is dealing with a lot of the bumps and imperfections really well. Now, with a small EV like this, you could either make it really soft, but it would just be really floppy and just kind of not a comfortable experience, or you make it really firm. Now, with Hyundai, I think they've got the balance not quite spot on. It is a little bit more on the firm side than the kind of soft side, but as I said earlier, it's not uncomfortable. This is dealing with most of the bumps and imperfections really well. Yes, if you go over a pothole or a deep manhole cover, you will get a sound coming into the cabin, but you won't get the largest of jolts. You might get a little bit of a shuffle, but that's about it. You will have to go over a big manhole cover or pothole in order to kind of expose the kind of firmness in the suspension and the larger alloy wheels. And then when it comes on to the refinement side of the Inster. I will say for town driving, for everyday driving, it's really lovely. I mean, at low speed, I'm doing 30 miles an hour now. It's really quiet. Yes, there's a little bit of tyre roar. I've got no wind noise. Although I can hear the wind outside, it's not the wind that's hitting the car. And then as I increase... Okay, now I'm starting to get a bit more wind noise. Tyre roar is not too bad. But now we're going to go to 60 miles per hour. So wait for the bing. That one. You can hear that motor whine when you put your foot down. But we're now doing 60 miles per hour. Tyre roar is not too bad. However, the main intrusion is wind noise, and it's, I don't know, I can't really tell if it's from the wing mirrors or possibly up here. I mean, I know we've got a couple of roof rails on there, but that's the main intrusion is wind noise. But I've actually got, having the 2 spec, I got the uprated sound system from the 1, and it's actually pretty decent. There's a good kind of quality in the speakers, and yeah, I've got no complaints about it. It does take away from any of those kind of outside noises coming into the cabin. So yeah, when it comes to the ride and refinement, this is a surprisingly comfortable car. It is great around town. Yes, you can feel some of those bumps and imperfections because it is ever so slightly more on the firm side than the soft side, but I think that's actually been done deliberately because well, it should definitely benefit when it comes to handling, which we'll talk about now. So what about the Inster's handling? Well, firstly, I'm loving the size and thickness of the steering wheel. It is actually wrapped in leather as well, so it does feel of a high quality and feels really lovely in my hands. And as I said when we started driving, this feels surprisingly nippy, and it is an absolute joy. Just the smallest of inputs into the steering and you get a reaction from the car, but it's not kind of skitty-ish or anything like that. It's feeling very kind of nippy and energetic, and when you turn in, yes, there is a little bit of roll and lean. You put it into sport mode, and then it doesn't do anything to the steering. It is all with the accelerator pedal, but I feel connected to the car. I do feel connected to the road. The only issue is because the Inster is tall, there is that little bit of kind of lean and wave there that you get with taller vehicles. Now, granted, I don't feel that this is going to kind of fall over like a Citroen Ami, but yeah, you can, if you do push it, you do feel that lean of the body there. But for around town, this is so lovely and nippy, and there's a nice bit of weight in the steering as well, so you do feel connected to the car. So it does feel like the Inster has a personality. It's got its own little quirky ways of doing things, and when you kind of tie it all together with the ride and the refinement, like I said, this is brilliant around town. I can nip around some of the little residential areas, and I think it was an Audi S3 or possibly an RS3 behind me, and because of all the little roundabouts and everything, I was able just to nip around them, and he had to kind of, well, he struggled a bit because of his larger size. But like here, I can push it and then turn in. Little bit of tyre squeal, I think, off the offside front, but that was fine. Little bit of understeer, I think that's what you're going to get from it. But yeah, around town, this thing is just an absolute joy. You can just nip around, and also because of the kind of slab-sidedness of the car, you get to judge its size really well. So you can kind of thread it through little gaps that larger cars won't be able to. But not only that, in a way that kind of some drivers perhaps don't have the confidence to do so, because they perhaps haven't really kind of got to know what the scale of and size of their car is. But in this, it doesn't take long at all And like I said, a couple of days driving and I'm used to having the B-pillar right next to me and me rubbing shoulders with it. But even right now, yeah, I can just feel a little bit of tyre going there, but it is fun. And that's why the suspension has got that little bit of firmness to it, in order to try and keep it as composed as it can be without it being uncomfortable. So yeah, combine that ride, refinement and the handling and you've got yourself a genuinely fun little nippy city EV. This is it is a lot of fun. So with my time in the Insta, what have been some of the highlights and some of the little niggles I need to let you guys know about? Well, highlights, ease of use. I mean, it's just a get in and go type of car. Everything's to hand, everything feels right, and it's just an absolute joy. The looks of the car definitely have been turning heads. I've seen so many people looking in the rear view mirror thinking, what the hell is that car behind me? Probably thinking it's a Chinese brand, because it looks so striking and so different to anything else that Hyundai are bringing out. But yeah, it's just been a really awesome little car to drive. In terms of niggles, yes, we got the usual ones with like the bongs and stuff coming into the cabin, but they're not as intrusive as other Hyundai Group cars, or Hyundai cars I should say. And I think the main reason for that is just because I got the 2 spec, and then when you go up to the 3 you do get a bit more in regards to safety kit. So that's just something to be aware of there. If safety is important to you, go straight for the Cross. But no, I've got no other niggles at all with the Insta. This is a nice brief little section, and I think it's time we just go straight on to the conclusion. So what are my thoughts on the Hyundai Inster? Well, at the beginning of this review I asked 2 big questions. Number 1, what's the car like? And number 2, in a world where a lot of people are saying that EVs are kind of soulless and lacking character, can the Inster win you over? Well, to answer the first question, as a package, the Inster I think is just spot on. Hyundai have worked their magic again, especially with the outside, with the looks. I mean, this thing definitely turns heads. I think this will turn more heads than, say, a BYD Dolphin Surf. That almost feels very traditional and kind of conservative in its styling compared to the Inster. But battery size, range, charging, comfort, refinement, the drive, everything is just right for the car. Because of it being an EV and not an ICE car, they have to adapt it to make it drive and feel right. And I think Hyundai have done that. And with the fact of you've got things like a 5-year warranty with the car, that's definitely going to get a lot of people coming to it, as opposed to other rivals out there, like for example the Dacia Spring. So yes, a Hyundai have again absolutely knocked it out of the park with the styling. Just the fact is, it looks so different to anything else out there. The only thing I would say is the price. It is a little bit more expensive than some of its rivals, but it's not just going up against the smaller rivals, it's going up against some very heavy hitters like the new Renault 5. It's a car that I've yet to drive, but I've heard such amazing things. But this will win you over because it has got charm, it's got personality, it's got character, it's got a cute little face up front, whereas something like the Renault 5 is going back to that kind of nostalgic 80s and 90s era, and BYD have got that kind of little baby Lamborghini look. Hyundai have gone out with the cutesy character, and I think they've done an amazing job with it. If you're after a small electric car, this has to be on your list. You've got to put the Insta high up on there because it's cute, it's quirky, it's got some very brilliant features to it in regards to practicality, and for what the car is designed for, it will do an amazing job. Please don't think of this for long range cruising and such. This is for those who've got a Hyundai i10, they've got a Honda Jazz, cars like that, Toyota Yaris, and they want to go to an EV, this will be one of them that they need to look at. So yes, I have been massively, massively impressed with the Inster. It's won me over. Even the driving position, with me being right close to the B pillar, I've gotten used to it. I mean, I'm getting a new car next week for testing, and it's going to feel alien being kind of away from it. So yeah, Hyundai, you've done it again. You've given us a brilliant EV, but it actually has charm and character to it, which is something a lot of us have been looking for. And on that note, I want to say a big thank you to everyone for watching this review. Don't forget to like, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and also the bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. Of course, if you've got any questions about the Inster and my time with it, please put them down in the comments section below and I'll do my utmost to answer them. But don't forget to follow on Instagram, Facebook and X for additional content. But yeah, guys, I've been really, really impressed by this. I've had 2 cars back to back from Hyundai, and they've both really kind of felt like they're top of the class. Last week it was the Santa Fe. Yes, bit of a contrast. And this week I've had the Inster. So yeah, this one actually, I will say, I don't really want to give back. It really is that cute and quirky. And I'm also absolutely loving the exterior paint. But everyone, have yourselves a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care, everybody, and bye-bye.